Good evening, and welcome to Stories from the Pandemic. Teachers share about their experiences. My name is Tamekia Jackson, and I am the Ford's Theater Arts Education Coordinator. And on behalf of Ford's Theater staff and our National Oratory Fellows, we welcome and thank you for joining. We're glad that you are here. It is my pleasure to introduce our hosts for tonight. Jim Rossi is a ninth year National Oratory Fellow and 12th year middle school teacher. W.Ellington Felton is an artist and teaching artist with Ford's Theater. Between the two of them, I know we're in good hands for tonight. Take it away, Jim and W.Ellington.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Tamekia. Good evening, everybody. It is great to be here with my friend W.Ellington.
Hey, absolutely, man. You see, I got my favorite sweatshirt on, my favorite hat. I even got some popcorn because it ain't nothing like popcorn.
With W, yeah. Hey, real quick, I can't see you.
No, you're looking good, man. What you mean?
Oh, no, I really appreciate that, but I can't see you. Your camera's off.
Huh?
Yeah, no, they think your camera's off. I can hear you, but I just can't see you.
Oh, wait. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Over there.
There you are. Gotcha.
That's better. Got it. Got it, man.
Perfect. Great to see you.
Hey, man, like I was saying, hey, man, I'm here. I got my popcorn. I'm wearing my favorite hoodie, my favorite hat. I'm ready to get down with some storytelling. Jim, James, hey, we're going to call each other nicknames throughout the night, man. I can't wait, man.
It's going to be awesome. I'm so excited for tonight. And, even though that camera thing, don't feel bad, W.Ellington. That's happened to all of us this year. But hey, at least you got your camera on before our entire night was over.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's been a crazy year. We've had a pandemic. There's been racial unrest. Let's not even talk about the election, the drama. And let's throw in a little sprinkle of an insurrection as a cherry on top. And all of this was going on while most of our interaction was going through computer screens like this.
You are 100% right. What a year to experience all of these events through a screen. But, I have to say, it hasn't all been bad. Have there been any moments that have stood out for you, moments of good?
Well, it was interesting. This year I worked on the Lincoln Oratory Festival, but it was online and, it was like virtual visits. So it wasn't like I was going into the classrooms like I normally would. And we worked on these historical speeches, but I'm going to be honest. The first day I zoomed into the class, oh man, I don't know if it was because the kids had been in quarantine or I had been in quarantine, but they were so respectful. They were so excited. They were grateful to have me there, man. And I'm gonna be honest, man. I was ready to shed a little tear myself, man. Wow. I got emotional, but it was wonderful, man. How about you?
Well, for me, I'm actually in my classroom right now. I'm here at the Northern Middle School in Hagerstown, Maryland.
Hey, look, now I'm gonna be honest, Jim. Not to cut you off, I'm gonna be honest, man. I thought you had did a little trickaroo on us, and you're doing like 2 gigs, like you're being like a weatherman and you're co-hosting with me tonight.
Yeah,
because the setup looks like.
Well, so we're gonna get to the cold front coming out of the west in a little bit, but while I'm here in this classroom, one of the things that I was happy that we did this year is that we were able to make connections in a virtual world. And one of those things that happens, sort of like hidden curriculum, is that you just develop inside jokes with the class. And every year, sometimes you have different jokes. And this year, I somehow convinced my class that I believed that birds were not real, that they were government drones. And I'll tell you what.
Wait. Time out.
Yeah.
Time out.
Yeah,
flag
on the play.
Flag on the play. Flag on the play. Wait. What? Did you actually you believe that?
No, not at all. But, in the course of just, time spent through a screen, we somehow got on a theory that the earth was flat. And I said, no, that's not true. The earth is round. But a theory that is true is that birds are drones. And we just took it and ran with it. And sometimes in classrooms, that just happens.
Yeah.
Now, don't worry. They know that it's not real. It's become this inside joke. But I really
Okay.
valued that sort of, that we were able to connect and laugh and kind of have this joke, even though for a good part of the year we were doing that through a screen.
Yeah, man, that sounds awesome. Speaking of enjoying the moment, we're here for a little story tell. Wait, no, I got it. A little story, and I don't know, man. I'm trying to come up with some clever way because we've been Netflix and chilling all for, I don't know, for the last year and a half.
14
right?
months. Yeah, 14 months.
Oh my goodness, man. But tonight we are going to listen to some stories. I mean, I think we have to get to that right now because that's what everybody's here for.
Agreed.
And I hope now tonight, everybody, you're going to hear stories of hope, humor, difficulty, and they're going to all come from teachers across the United States of America. And it's my pleasure to introduce our first storyteller of the night. Our first storyteller is Lauren Baxter. She's a 7th grade English teacher, language arts teacher from Kakaloko Middle School in Denver, Pennsylvania. All right, let's make sure we get that right. Lauren's a master fellow with the National Oratory Fellows Program here with Ford's Theater. Hey, Lauren, welcome. Let's hear your story. I can't wait. I got my popcorn ready. Come on.
Thank you, W. Every summer, the dread sets in, right around that very last week of July, because I know what is coming, the calendar flip. And I turn the page from July to August. Summer's over. My all too comfortable schedule, never setting that alarm. Every single hour is a happy hour. And all of my precious time belonging to me comes to a halt. While it really sucks, it's just simply part of the tradition at this point. Summer Lauren needs to rein it in, and school year Lauren must emerge. My time transitions to their time, my students' time. I lesson plan, I content reorganize, and I spend way too much time decorating my classroom. This year, despite all of the change, that tradition remained kind of the same. Well, sort of. This year, when I walked into my classroom, all I saw were rows of desks. So, normal for most teachers. But to me, this was a shock to the tradition that I have tried to build. All of my furniture, and I'm talking the couches, the coffee tables, the fancy Starbucks tables with the stools, was gone. So I come in, I glance at the door thinking, I must be mistaken, right? But the sign said room 140. This was my classroom. But at the same time, it really wasn't. And this was the first of many it was, but it wasn't moments. If I'm being honest with you, every day of hybrid teaching was, and it was, but it wasn't moment. Tradition turned into a dirty word this year for me while I was planning my first day of school lesson. I was planning, but nothing went as planned. This whole concept I was now immersed in, this hybrid teaching, was, as a student so eloquently told me a few weeks ago, my own personal version of hell. I was in 2 places at once, physically and mentally, attempting to deliver content through faulty technology to kids who didn't know how to use the faulty technology while following safety procedures that changed pretty much every day, while keeping myself socially distanced so I could show up for work every day, only to find out that having 2 degrees and a decade's worth of teaching experience paled in comparison to the standard that was now expected of me. This, my friends, was not for the faint of heart. This was Mary freaking Poppins on steroids. And to think a few months earlier, Summer Lauren could not imagine it becoming any worse. In March of 2020, and it was day 28 of quarantine to be exact. I kept a journal. It became official we were not returning to the school building for the remainder of the year. As each day passed, so did every single one of my expectations. You know, each day I got up and I prayed for literally the bare minimum. Someone might log on. Someone might have a question for me. Someone might tell me she understood the lesson, or better yet, you know, just see the lesson. I never knew if my students were completing work, and I had no way of holding them accountable as per instructions by my school district. You know, I felt a little bit like Kate Winslet in the movie The Holiday, the scene where she breaks up with her boyfriend and she's over the gas stove, inhaling the fumes, realizing she's insane, slapping herself, yelling, "Low point," pretty much every single day. This was school, but it wasn't. And as the low points got lower, and believe me, they did, we inched closer and closer to the beginning of the school year. I was ready to go back, but I really wasn't. I wanted that tradition. I needed it, but I wasn't ready for the stark reality. So here we are, a year later. School year, Lauren, has been back in action for over a year since the initial shutdown. And I won't lie to you, the challenges that persisted throughout the year have still stayed the same. We have lingering effects, but those challenges have turned into some really great motivators for many of my students. Together, we are no longer living in the "it was." We're not trying to force that tradition anymore, but we're surviving in the "it is." Every day, I see kids smiling when we're reading our class novel, or sing along to songs when I'm playing music during our classwork time. My favorite's when they call each other out when they hear something they know they shouldn't. And I love how they roll with the punches every single day. Because for so many months, I just couldn't see that my classroom was going to change until it did. And what I'm seeing from my students now kind of resembles a little piece of hope. Maybe, dare I say it, a little piece of tradition. So sure, we are all still sitting in desks in room 140, and we are still staring at computer screens more than I would like, and we're all still wearing a mask. The difference is now I can see what's behind it. Possibilities I never could have imagined before. Maybe that made all the "it was" worth it. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Lauren. Thank you for that wonderful story. I loved the idea of tradition, and I loved the idea of in this new environment that we're in, this new normal, being able to see behind the mask and connect with your students. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Next, our next story comes from a DC local. Yesenia Iglesias is a Ford's teaching artist and associate artist. Yesenia has been a teaching artist with Ford's for the past 2 years. Yesenia, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Jim or James. I really appreciate that introduction. So, my first year as a teaching artist with Ford's was in 2019. I had taught in Seattle before moving here, but it had been a few years, so I was excited and nervous, but mostly excited. I went in on the first day hoping to integrate the skills I had acquired in my professional experience and my overpriced degree into this new form of speech education. And I had memorized all the elements, right? Posture, tone, pitch, volume, etc. I was ready. I was assigned a class of 8th graders who were tough to quiet down and even tougher to motivate, but not impossible. They were really eager to try something new. So one day, On my third attempt at trying to reassign lines for Lincoln's second inauguration speech, my clearly frustrated lead teacher half whispered to me, half announced out loud, "It's going to be so bad. They're going to back out last minute, or they're not going to show up." I was speechless, pardon the pun, but mostly disappointed. Their own teacher had refused to support them because he was afraid of being embarrassed. But I thought, those students are probably more afraid of their own failure. Okay, fine. I dug my heels in and I became even more determined to help them show up as their best selves. I'd prove him wrong. And that we did. The day of the performance, they were wonderful. They were nervous, of course, but present and fearless. And you could tell they were proud to be up there. Flash forward to this school year as I begin the same speech program, but with 4th and 5th graders, but this time completely virtual. I come in with the same vigor and energy I had in 2019, right? I was ready to teach these new students posture, tone, pitch, volume, etc. But I had learned my mistakes from 2019 and vowed to never let my students feel like they couldn't succeed. But as many of you know now, virtual teaching brings its own set of, como se dice, unique challenges. I had classes where students could be seen traveling in the backseat of the moving car, where they were sitting outside in the yard or with the TV blasting in the background, taking care of their siblings before their guardians came home from work. I had students with really bad Wi-Fi connections, or students who were just so not used to sitting in front and working with a desktop camera that the angle was all wrong. And I just saw like ear and forehead and it was just zero face. Some days I had 3 out of 8 students, and my lead teacher would have to text the parents and the students would have to text their classmates, all to remind them that we had a session that day. Then they'd trickle in, tired from the day, a little hungry, but willing to show up in spite of everything. So the class became less about teaching the mechanics of speech delivery and more about helping them show up. Just show up. The day of the recording of our speech, we do a full Wi-Fi sound and camera check. Everyone arrives on time. It's a miracle. I have zero expectations of how this will go, but I'm excited to just be here and that they're all here. We run the speech twice, and then I tell the students our next run will be recorded. Suddenly, from behind the camera, I see an adult appear on screen. She walks over to one of the students, Matthew, licks her fingers, and then smooths down his hair. Then she goes back behind the camera. On another screen, I can see Jessie conversing with someone. And then I see her mic icon turn on and off, and she thumbs up with approval. Someone's helping her with her audio equipment for the recording. And someone came out to help Matthew look his best. That's when I knew this wasn't just a regular speech performance in a regular school year. It was an experience, something different from what the students had been doing all year during this crazy pandemic. And they were showing up, not just for themselves, but for their family. And their families were showing up for them. And I thought about my class in 2019 and how so much of this program is, yes, about honoring the craft of delivery, but also, and I would even argue more importantly, it's about the people who deliver and the ones who show up for them. It's about community, the collective. It's about believing in these students so that they can believe in themselves. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Hey, I don't know about you, but Yesenia, that was such a, you hit it on the nail. It's not about all the chaos. It's not about a pandemic. It's not about the Zoom or the or the moon. It's about us believing in the students so that they can believe in themselves. Oh, hey, look, I don't know about you folks that are viewing this, but I'm really digging this storytelling. We're going to bring our next storyteller to the stage, and Lindsey Charron is an 8th grade history teacher from Horace Ensign Middle School in Newport Beach, California. Lindsey is a Master Oratory Fellow, and she's completing her 5th year with the Ford's National Oratory Fellows Program. Lindsey, hey, lights, camera, action.
Now boarding Flight 101 for U.S. History from Jamestown through Reconstruction. Please make sure your seatbelt is fastened and you're aware of where the emergency exits are. This flight will be bumpy. In fact, it's going to be extremely turbulent at times. But rest assured, we will have a smooth landing, I promise. Cute, I know, right? This is how I start off every class period on the first day of school when I get to welcome my students to my classroom. I hand them a boarding ticket, and I'm even dressed up as a pilot. But not this year. No, not this year. This year has been like no other for teachers across the country. This year, I started off the school year looking at multiple screens, hoping that my students would have their video feeds on so I can get a glimpse of what they looked like. Starting the school year off on Zoom made trying to form those crucial relationships with my students that much more difficult. My jokes just didn't seem to transfer. The videos that I knew would make them laugh, I didn't play because I was afraid of the streaming. They didn't want to answer questions about any of the documents or primary sources we were looking at. And at times, the only avenue through which students were willing to communicate, the chat box, seemed dead. Until it wasn't. From the beginning, Sebastian was a student that would immediately enter my second period Zoom room and type, "Hi, good morning," as soon as he came in, instantly lifting my mood. He would ask me how my weekend was or what we were going to be studying. He's very passionate about making sure and working towards all people in our country being treated equally. So I had him hooked as soon as we started looking at the Declaration of Independence and how our founders weren't really living up to those ideals that they had expressed within the document at the time. Because the election was happening, I always had one active participant in our Monday election lessons. As we analyzed the candidates and their platforms, he was more vocal, willing to speak out in support of the one candidate that he felt was the only choice if people wanted a president that would work towards helping not just one group of citizens, but all citizens. When we began hybrid learning in November, I hoped that it would make discussing those difficult topics easier. They were going to be in the classroom. There was nowhere to hide. Unfortunately, that didn't turn out to be the case. Many of them seemed even more reluctant to participate in class and answer questions. I was using my Cricut sound effect machine in the classroom more than I had on Zoom. But thankfully, there was Sebastian. Not only did he raise his hand to answer questions, but he asked questions. Questions that weren't even necessarily related to what we were discussing in class, but questions about things that he had made connections to on his own. As I tried to address what I believed were the essential questions that all students needed to learn, I quickly realized in our new schedule that I was not going to be able to cover all of the content that I typically do in a school year. And it made me sad because I knew I was going to miss certain discussions with students like Sebastian. So I bought a book about African American, Native American, and Hispanic history that I knew he would love, and I gave it to him. The look on his face, priceless. When the insurrection took place in our nation's capital in January, it was Sebastian, amongst a few others, that stayed on Zoom to discuss what was going on. He wanted to know why the people there were being treated so differently than the people that had protested after the murder of George Floyd. He wanted to engage in the content, and he remembered the questions that historians ask, which we had been discussing all year. And it was at that moment that I realized it didn't matter whether we were on Zoom or in the classroom. Relationships could be formed regardless of whether or not we were teaching through distance learning or actually in person. Students just need to know that their teachers care They need to know that their teachers are always going to be there for them and that their teachers want to have those rich discussions and they want to answer the questions that their students have. Even if the students don't engage, students recognize when a teacher is making that effort to connect. So thank you, Sebastian. Thank you for reminding this veteran teacher that it's about relationships, and it's always been about relationships.
Wow, Lindsey, thank you. Thank you so much for that story. I think all teachers that are watching tonight have students like Sebastian, and I know that you're probably very grateful to have him. You talked about that in your speech. You talked about turbulence, which was such a powerful word to describe this past year. I know you're grateful for Sebastian, but I know I speak for your students and your entire school community when they are so grateful for you and all the work that you do for all of your students every single day. Thank you for such an incredible story. Our next speaker, our next storyteller, is an old friend of mine, someone who comes to us from the independent school in Wichita, Kansas, Mr. Dave McIntire, 8th grade history educator. He is a Master Oratory Fellow. He's completing his 9th year with Ford's Theater. I'm so happy to be here with him tonight via Zoom, because usually this time, every single year, we get a chance to hang out. Dave, the floor is yours. Good evening, sir.
Thanks, Jim. I love order. No, really, I love order. I love highlighters and Post-it notes and anything from the Container Store or IKEA that neatly stores highlighters and Post-it notes. I love order. So it may come as a surprise that I also love improv. Watching improv is like watching skydivers jump from an airplane while still packing their parachute. I love improv spontaneity and its embrace of the unknown. Now, order and uncertainty seem at odds, but in improv, spontaneity and the unknown are embraced because of the order instilled in the power of yes and. In improv, you build on a reality that is being set before your eyes. So what is given, whether it's an invisible ball, a look, or a statement, must be accepted, whether you want to or not. You can't say no. So this summer, when it became clear that the pandemic was going to be, well, the pandemic, I decided to lean into the uncertainty of it, to say yes and. We're a small school, and so the students were going to meet person to person. In addition to in-class learning, we had also planned for students who'd be remote all year, and then there would be some who transitioned from classroom to quarantine and then back to classroom. It was going to be a lot. The first couple of months were a blur of Clorox wipes, hand sanitizer, and fear, of concern. You could see it in the eyes of everyone. It reminded me of the fear during my first year of teaching. Everything was new, everything was unknown, and everything seemed fraught. In late September, the teaching of the colonial period became the first major obstacle, the first real test of yes and. I went to my class and laid out the problem. Taking questions about curriculum to my students is something I learned my first year of teaching. We're trapped in a classroom for 45 minutes, so I figured they should have a voice, right? In that course of that September discussion, someone brought up Minecraft. I know less than nothing about Minecraft, and I was prepared to strike the idea when other students started to chime in. Now, for the uninitiated, Minecraft is sort of a pixelated version of the old video game, The Sims. Whole worlds can be created using a pickaxe and an inventory of metals, woods, well, anything you can imagine. I knew nothing about Minecraft, but I do know excited students when I hear it. So we plotted and planned over the next few days. I approached my son. He knows Minecraft, and I was going to need a guide. In the evening, Spencer and I built the realm. During the day, the students and I built the academic portion of the project. Ultimately, what we came up with was the Jamestown Minecraft Company, a series of readings, research, and guiding questions, which gave teams of students the core colonial knowledge they're going to need in order to prove their worth to the company. To give it a sense of reality, the teams would stand inspection. A cadre of 3 adults from outside the school would question them as the board of directors of the Jamestown Minecraft Company. That board would determine playing time and give them a grade based on the benchmarks the students had come up with. I didn't tell them, but they were creating an assessment far more difficult than what their predecessors had. And I was okay with that. Now, remember, this is the pandemic, so nothing went as planned. We lost the adults to quarantining concerns, and so I became an inquisiting team of 1. The students blew me away. They were so prepared. Even when I went on an obscure rabbit trail, they knew enough to make it back to the main road. Even when I tricked them, they stood by their answers. When the school's bandwidth betrayed us, we figured out workarounds. When my son's realm crashed, one of my students in 5 minutes crafted what Spencer and I took 5 hours to create. Was it perfect? No. But what lesson ever is? That's the power of yes and. What we are forced to do in a crisis often transcends what we thought we could get done. I don't ever want to teach through a pandemic again. Ever. But the reminder to say yes and has changed me as a teacher. I can't do anything but accept what I'm given. A student, a task, a moment, a pandemic. But what I do with that, however, is up to me.
Hey, slow clap. I got a slow clap on that one. Dave, that's such an incredible story. You know, I can honestly say not only as an actor, improv is very near and dear to my heart, but it's actually the improv and the ability of improvising that makes my educational experience when I go into the classroom and I teach students, it's just so amazing for me, because that's really what I do. It's like, you know, they tell us, you know, be in the moment as actors. And, you know, I feel like I would be doing those young people a disservice if I didn't really meet them where they were and be in the moment. So thank you so much, Dave, for reminding us all that. Now, our next storyteller is Karen Richey. She's a 7th and 8th grade history educator from Toby Johnson Middle School in Elk Grove, California. Karen is a Master Fellow completing her 4th year in the Fellows program here with Ford's Theater. Hey, Karen, lights, cameras, action.
We all have that one friend who gets us to do things we just wouldn't do on our own. Actually, I think I have a few of those friends, but this story's about Caitlin. Caitlin and I both teach middle school history. She's in New York and I'm in California. We met 6 years ago doing a workshop for Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. The recommended hotel seemed a little sketchy in the online reviews, so Caitlin sent out an email looking for someone who wanted to share an Airbnb rather than stay at the Hotel Scarrington. I answered her email, and my roomie and I spent a really fun week learning about Abraham Lincoln's Washington, D.C. Caitlin and I kept in touch. 2 years later, she contacted me and encouraged me to apply to Ford's Oratory Fellowship program. Oh, I immediately resisted. This is not for me. I tried to explain. I am the person who sat in the front row of my college classes so that I would have the courage to speak without everyone turning to look at me. Yes, I'm a teacher and I spend my days talking to students, but applying to become an oratory fellow meant making a commitment to achieve excellence in a skill that terrified me. Caitlin was not interested in my excuses. While I am reserved, Caitlin is outgoing. She is warm and witty, fun and fabulous. She does not hold back, and it is very, very hard to say no to Caitlin. So I didn't. Her belief in me gave me the confidence to embrace my discomfort and fears. Fears of not being smart enough and talented enough to belong in the program. fears of being a public failure. The other fellows were patient and kind, and slowly I settled in as a contributing member of the oratory program. And then 2020 arrived. With a once-in-a-century pandemic, a summer of protests over systemic racism, and a school year that was uncertain in every way. Just like when I entered the Fellows program, this school year seemed fraught with opportunities for public failure. I was struggling to picture how I could create a classroom community over Zoom. Shortly before school started, I made the mistake of logging on to an online community forum to see what parents were saying. It was disheartening to read comments that vilify teachers. Teachers should all be fired because their union was insisting on protections in the workplace. Teachers should have their pay cut in half because they weren't really working during distance learning. Teachers were lazy and didn't care about their students. I was stunned by these comments. But I took a step back, took a deep breath. I got off that forum, and I realized that my students don't see me this way. And honestly, their opinions are the ones that matter. After teaching for 25 years, I've become accustomed to supporting students as they navigate the day after. The day after 9/11, the day after Columbine, the day after Sandy Hook, the day after Parkland, the day after George Floyd, the day after the Capitol insurrection. The pandemic has meant that this school year has been day after day after day after day without end. My classes begin in Zoom with students interacting with me and one another using the chat box. One February day, third period began with a student asking about teachers getting vaccinated, which led to a discussion about which students had parents who'd had the opportunity to be vaccinated, and then shifted to those who had family members who had become ill or died due to COVID. The comments flooded my chat so quickly, I couldn't really register who had said what. When I shared that story with a group of friends who are not educators, they were shocked. How do you deal with something like that, they asked. Well, I did what I have done too many times before. I gave my students time and space to share their feelings. We took a mindful break. I offered the services of our counselor. I made a mental note to check in on them soon, and we resumed the lesson. Teachers are not unfeeling robots who care only for their curriculum. We're not detached from our students, but absorbing the loss and the pain of the day after comes with a price. Throughout the pandemic, Ford staff has given the fellows a space to process our day after day after day. A place to laugh and cry, to rage and grieve, to offer support and inspire ideas. August of 2019 was the last time the fellows gathered in person. One of the activities we did in that meeting was use pins and yarn on a map of the United States to create a visual representation of our connections. The threads connecting us as fellows have held strong throughout the pandemic. I'm so grateful to Caitlin for insisting that I apply to Ford's oratory program, and I can't wait to see her in person again and give her a hug. And my heart will truly know the pandemic is over when it's safe for all of us to gather once again at Ford's Theater. Welcome some new fellows and add some more pins and threads to our map.
Wow.
Woo! Hey, man.
Chills. Chills.
I don't know.
W.Ellington, that, Karen's day after and the importance of that. Mm-hmm. And then day after day, oh my gosh. I mean, we mentioned, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
Go ahead. No, go. No, man.
I mean, we mentioned in the beginning just how difficult this past school year has been. And that's a thread, right? It's a thread that we're hearing throughout. For you, as a teaching artist, as an artist, can you talk a little bit about this past year? And maybe some of the as we weave our thread through this night, maybe some of the things that jumped out to you.
Well, I think well, in terms of tonight, I think the overall theme we've heard so far has been just a reminder that life is a journey. You understand, and it's not necessarily there's an ultimate destination per se, but it's the idea and the belief of the unseen. It's it's the belief that that okay, I know if I go this mile here, and if I make a right, that I'll know that I'll end up here. But I gotta believe that I got the means to do it, despite what's in front of me. Whether it's traffic or a flat tire. So I think that's the overall theme. But I can honestly say, for me, going when I was as an educator this year, I definitely experienced, hey, the pink elephant in the room, the insurrection that was that happened at the Capitol. Of course, my students were in New Orleans, and they knew that I was a Washington, D.C. based educator and artist. They were like, hey, they were worried. They were like, hey, what's going on out there? And is your family safe and so forth? And I just had to remind them that, part of the process of this thing that we call a democracy, sometimes it involves some of us, some of the citizens, sometimes not feeling as if we're being fully represented. And unfortunately, when we don't feel represented, because we may not have the position of the politician or the person who's the source of maybe the frustration, is often we choose to take it out on our immediate surroundings. And we also had situations of a civil war in the past in the history of this country, and I just reminded them to stay positive and just hope that just like previous moments in history in this country, the good side will prevail, depending on whoever you feel the good side is. And hey, but besides that, man, hey, we kept it rolling, man. And again, like I said, the theme is pushing through,
Yes.
What about you? What about you?
Well, W, you and I, we share this experience because, and Karen mentioned it, the whole idea of day after. We use this space, the space that's around me here, to unpack day after events, right? And this year, after the insurrection, I thought, all right, day after. It brought me back to when I was teaching in Baltimore, and Freddie Gray was murdered, and the uprising occurred in Baltimore. And I remember the next day, our students coming together in my classroom, we sat in a circle and we unpacked it. That's all we did all day. And when I was watching the insurrection happen, I said, okay, I think I have the tools to do this. And then I remembered I was doing it through virtual setup. And that feeling of, it is essential that we unpack this, but how do I unpack it authentically when I'm speaking into a camera and the wind blows the right way, my Wi-Fi is going to go out. But as always, sometimes our deepest anxieties as teachers are completely washed away by just how amazing our students are. And that next day after that, the insurrection, even though we were meeting virtually, we unpacked it. But you speaking of the journey is so important, because it's not just about the destination, it's about that journey and valuing that journey. And that's where, the education and really, and where the growth takes place.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why, programs like this and the stories during the pandemic are important for us, not just as educators, but just as citizens, to be able to listen and, kind of understand and know that they weren't the only ones maybe going through this whatever, we could call it a pandemic. I don't know what we call it, man.
We just call it 2020 at this point.
That's right. Right. That's right.
And luckily we call it last year. 100% agreed.
Yeah. Now we're going to keep things rolling, because just like a journey, a story has to keep going. And we have next coming up to the stage we have our good friend Ben Rivers. Ben is a pre-K through 5 music educator. Oh, I love that. I'm a musician myself, so I might be a little biased here, but he's an educator at the Independent School in Wichita, Kansas, out there with our buddy Dave. Ben is also a Master Oratory Fellow, completing his 5th year. Take the stage, Ben.
I swore I would never teach music, never elementary music, and especially not in the Midwest. I grew up in the Midwest, in a rural farming town that was also a bedroom community for the aircraft industry, which you can read that for what it is, white flight. But in this bastion of white privilege, I became convinced that my soul belonged in the 60s, the 1960s. I was transfixed by the radical counterculture that put up a big middle finger to gender norms and the military complex and societal expectations. Things changed and the country was moved. I was moved by the grunge and psychedelia of Jefferson Airplane. It enlivened me, it emboldened me. White Rabbit was my gateway into Volunteers and War Movie and the music that activated its listeners. So I knew that after college, I would move to an urban, liberal, creative commune, but not culty, because I don't do the whole like matching tennis shoe thing and all the rules. Nobody has time for that. So now I find myself teaching elementary music in a Midwest city that is 33 miles from my hometown, in a location where it is still expected that, men drink black coffee and none of that frou-frou crap. And don't worry, I have not let that stop my queer romance with iced coffee. That game is strong. And I'm teaching, and I think that I'm doing the best by my students, by giving them the best and quality materials, Western classical art music, American folk songs, and I even devote a poor influence of African music on American culture. That's enough, right? And this goes on for years, right? And then COVID metastasizes. And we are forced to be alone. I'm forced to be alone with my thoughts that I have been pushing down by just constantly staying busy. I'm also forced to sit and face the fact that Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Monica Diamond weren't killed by rogue white supremacists, but by a system that was built on white supremacy. And I'm enraged. But what do I do? Because here I am teaching music in a Midwest private school. And then Gen Z activates and they go ham on protesting and fighting racism. I watch them radicalize themselves and give a big middle finger to the militarized police complex. And in their spare time, they start dismantling gender. I thought that was going to be me. But here I am, still alone, teaching the reading and writing of music in a Midwest private school and watching them dismantle in like a mental breakdown sort of way, but in the way that you snap a glow stick and it activates. Because what I had been ignoring was that deep down, I knew that I was nurturing a culture of white supremacy and colonization. Deep down, I knew that I was overlooking the insidiousness of racism in my teaching methods and materials. So I took out my favorite folk song children's game to teach with. Chicken in the fence post can't dance Josie. I took my analysis sheet for it and I took a piece of paper out of its protective covering. I know I can't teach it anymore. I can't ignore the fact that they don't want to dance with Josie because Josie is slang for little black girl, a little black girl like George Floyd's daughter, and I rip it. And I rip that piece of paper again. And then I take it over to my sink and I drop it in and I grab my candle lighter and I light it up. And then I very quickly turn on the sink and I douse it because I don't want to be the reason that my whole apartment had to evacuate. But that moment, that was enough. It activated all the glow sticks. It has been a weird and tough year for me for many reasons beyond just COVID. Decolonizing yourself isn't easy. Throwing out what is comfortable and what is known isn't easy. Change isn't easy. I thought I was gonna be a radical queer hippie fighting for justice. And now I'm starting to realize that that's exactly who this Midwest music teacher can be.
Ben, thank you so much. What a powerful story, and thank you for opening up and really sharing with us this past year. And you are an activist. I've seen you in work, and you are an incredible teacher. And thank you again so much for sharing your story tonight. Our next speaker is a Ford's teaching artist and associate artist. Ashley Buster has been with Ford's Theater for the past 6 years. Ashley, good evening. Stage is yours.
Thanks, Jim. So the last year has been very interesting. I've been able to wear two hats. As a program manager for educational programs at a theater, I had loads of concerns that all of my programs would completely fall apart. Arts kind of took a hit during everything that was happening. So I didn't think teachers would understand. Maybe they wouldn't want virtual theater during the pandemic. So I was nervous about that. But as a teaching artist, virtual online teaching, we had been doing it all summer for summer camp, and I am a Ford's teaching artist, so I get the opportunity for the National Oratory Fellows to teach online and work with students across the country via Zoom and every other platform all the time. I felt like I was prepared. I thought I could handle it. So the school year began, and much to my surprise, on both fronts, everything was okay. There were loads of teachers signing up. They were excited that we still had programs to offer. And I was excited that I still got to be in the classroom with some of these students virtually, even though I could not be there physically. And I was also shocked at the amount of teachers that were signing up. I know our audience very well. And I was surprised to see that there were people who would never sign up for workshops in person were psyched to sign up for workshops virtually. So that was exciting. And it was wonderful because there was a lot of pressure this year to make sure that the programs kept flowing. However, as the year went on, and as we got closer to the holiday season, I noticed things started to change a little bit. The students were tired. The teachers were tired. I was tired. And when you're in a new classroom every 2 weeks, you don't get to build those relationships that you really want to build. You always have to have this cartoonish energy. It's very Barney-esque, you know, to make sure that things stay fresh, and it's exhausting. It's fun at its core, but it's very exhausting, and everyone was exhausted. So by the time the new year rolled around, I noticed we were not having as many teachers sign up for workshops. I was hearing that teachers were focusing on more asynchronous work. So our synchronous style workshops that pulled all the students in, turn on your cameras, participate, get ready and do it, it just wasn't working as well. I was starting to get really disheartened, and I was getting a lot of pressure to reach out to the schools that we're in all the time. Let's talk to those students. Let's see what we can do. And I just didn't know what to do. And I was tired. I would talk to a lot of my fellow educators. We would complain. We would talk about how hard it is, talk about the climate that the country was in through the midst of the pandemic, aside the virus. And it would just be very draining. But then we would also lift each other up. And in the midst of those conversations, I realized this virtual teaching opportunity in the midst of all this going on was the perfect opportunity to not only reach out to the people who we work with all the time, but new audiences. So it was in talking to one of my best friends from college that I remembered we wanted to have our students and our practices come together a lot. He's been a math teacher for years, but he is now the assistant principal of Andrew Hamilton School. in West Philadelphia. So this was the perfect opportunity to have what I do meet him where he was. And he thought it would be a great opportunity for his 5th grade students. So there are 2 5th grade classes, and we decided we were going to do it. We were going to do a 5-day residency for each set of 5th graders. And honestly, I was excited, but I was worried. Was this going to be a long 5-week stretch? Was I going to be teaching and talking to a camera that was off and students that just didn't want to speak and didn't want to participate? I was worried. I was nervous, but I was excited. So we jumped in there and we did it. And honestly, it was all right. The first group was really excited. Their cameras were on. They were participating. Everyone was there. The second class, we had a couple issues in the beginning. 15 kids on the roster, 6 kids in the Zoom room, 3 of the cameras on, but that was kind of a thing that happened during virtual learning. So it was all right. I wasn't too worried. And I became less worried as the classes went on. With every single meeting, the students were more and more engaged. Their teacher, myself, we didn't have to call on them as much or coax them to participate actively. They were volunteering. They were making connections with the text and with things that were happening in their lives. They were even asking if I could come back and do some more. One student even told me I was one of their favorite teachers now. It was super, super sweet. And I was very excited to see that in this time where I thought the students were going to be burnt out and done as we went along, they were actually getting more and more excited. But the real icing on the cake came on our performance day. So these workshops and residencies culminate with a performance of the show that these students have been preparing. Virtually, it's not the same. It hasn't been the same. But the day of the performance, it's myself, the teacher, and the students. We do what they've been rehearsing for the last 4 workshops, and we talk about how it made them feel, what they learned, all that good stuff. However, this time it was a little different. The teacher notified me that admin wanted to show up and watch their performance. That's never happened before. I was thrilled. I was excited. I was great. And I figured it was going to be my friend because he's an awesome AP and he set the whole thing up. But much to my surprise, it was not just him. It was him. It was his principal. It was guidance. It was math teachers. It was support staff. It was teachers from specials that didn't have a class that period. There was so many people that tuned in on this Zoom call with cameras going on and off, with sketchy mics, whatever the case may be. But they showed up to watch these students perform. And at the end of their 10-minute performance, cheered for them as though they just saw Denzel do Fences on Broadway. It seems like something so simple, but it was so magical because in the midst of all the craziness that was going on, they showed that teacher and they showed those students 2 really simple things that I think we really needed a little bit more of during the school year. And that is encouragement and support. That's something we need all the time as educators, as students, this year even as parents. But a simple act of just taking that time out of your day to show up and cheer for these students and support them in something new that they've not experienced before made me realize why those students were able to continue to go during this entire experience, why the teacher was so excited during this entire experience, because they fostered this culture of encouragement and support in their school, and it really inspired me. So I want to say to all of the learners and the educators that have been doing this the entire year, amidst all the craziness, amidst all the emotional turmoil, keep doing it. I want to encourage you. I support you. You are beasting it. You are killing it. And we are doing great.
We're making it happen and we're doing a great job. We're making it happen and we're doing a great job. Hey, I don't know about y'all. That's my new mantra. That's the mantra for all our educators, our creatives, our entrepreneurs, whatever you are, and you're out there and you believe this journey of pushing through these stories that we're hearing this evening. Hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ashley, for those words. They definitely making an impact on, I'm pretty sure, everyone who's tuning in and listening. Now, our next storyteller is Gianni Clarkso. Gianni is a history educator at Paul Public Charter High School, right here where I'm at in Washington, D.C. Okay, Mo? Okay, Young? We right here in D.C. Gianni's, he's a Master Oratory Fellow, finishing up his 7th year with the program. That's right, 7th. Seven is a strong number, my brother. So, yo, let's go. Ashley, it's yours.
Controversial statement, but 444 is my favorite Jay-Z album. Okay, notice I said favorite, not the best, because we all know that the best Jay-Z album is Reasonable Doubts. All right, it's clever, it's witty, it's brags, it's easily 5 mics. Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubts is the best album, but my favorite album, 444, is different. Jay-Z is different. He's reflective. He's pensive. He's a bit timid at times. It's a Jay-Z looking back on his career and really questioning himself and life. In fact, popular rumor, you can take this with you, popular rumor says that Jay-Z sat at his dining room table in the midst of a very pensive thought and thought about his life and where it was going, if he was really the best at what he does. And he had this whole conversation with himself, sitting in his dining room table at 4:44 a.m. And that's how the album came up with its title. He's a reflective man at this point in his life. He's reviewing his practices and he's finding new answers. Well, that's clearly enough about Jay-Z. Unless, Jay-Z, you are listening. And if you are listening, this would be a great time to donate to Ford's Theater. In fact, W.Ellington, Jim, if you could put at the bottom where you can donate to Ford's Theater, could you put that up for me? You guys are not going to do this, are you? No? Well, listen, after I tell my story, I'm going to need Jim's Janet Jackson control microphone because that's kind of cool to me. Well, anyway, back to this school year. This school year finished up very much like last school year with us looking at our students through the Brady Bunch boxes of Zoom. And trust me, it was very annoying. However, many of the teachers were extremely nervous, but not I. See, I'm never nervous. And I'm never nervous because I'm good at my job. And I love being good at my job. In fact, I have plaques and awards that all say that I am good at my job. Me being good at my job is actually part of my identity of who I am. In a moment of boldness, I said, in fact, in front of a professional development before the school year started, I said, this is the school year where people are going to be exposed. If you are a bad teacher, we're going to find out by November. Because you know what? Good teaching is good teaching no matter what's going on. I said that. So somewhere between November, and if you're not a teacher, you don't understand what November is. November is just when you've just gotten off of Thanksgiving break, but there's clearly like 3 to 4 more years before Christmas break starts. And my kids were struggling. Attendance was down, grades were low, morality was low, my morality was low. And I had hit the wall. So what do? What I've always done my entire life. I just worked harder. That's right, because I've always thought if you work harder, that things will see itself through, because hard work always works when talent doesn't work. And sure enough, nothing changed. And I was stuck. And I had hit the pandemic wall. So then I decided to have a conversation with my father who taught for numerous years, tons of awards, everyone's favorite history teacher. And I said, well, you know what? Let me see what I can do, because there's no way in the world that I can be bad at my job. The least I should be able to do is kick some ideas off of my father. So I sat there at the dining room table with my father and I explained everything that I was going through. I told my father that I had written these brilliant lesson plans, that I had shown videos that were very unique, that I had put together really great fun games that kids could play, and everything should be going great. And my father looked at me with a twinkle in his eye and he laughed. And he said, did you ever bother to ask the kids how they would like to learn? What a humbling moment to sit there and think that you're the GOAT. and you're really just a sheep dressed up like one. Not that good, because I had failed to really realize something. A picture perfect moment of hubris, of realizing because I thought that I was the expert, that I knew what was best for students. And boy, was I wrong. So that next day, I walked into, logged onto, you get the picture, logged into my classroom, and I said to them, hey, how would you all like to learn? And my students looked back at me. Some of them immediately turned off their cameras because they thought it was a trick. And they said, well, I didn't think you would ever ask us anything like this. And sure enough, we talked and we talked. And really, they talked and I listened. And after time, I realized that, hey, you know what? They had some really great ideas. Now, mind you, some ideas we were not going to be able to do. Of course, many of my students want to get rid of Mondays, and because who doesn't hate Mondays? I mean, let's face it, we're all a little Garfield at times. We hate Mondays and would love some lasagna. But I told them there's nothing that we could do about the Mondays thing. But some of them said, hey, maybe we can, have more guest speakers. Maybe we can do virtual field trips. And as I took all these ideas in, they in turn made me a better teacher. Why? Because I realized that I was not afraid to listen. See, sometimes when we teach, we think that the talking part is the most important thing. I mean, it's called, I'm a national fellow, oratory fellow, not a national listening fellow. But it's the listening is where we really gain the most from our students. And it was needed more than anything as students are trying to survive and deal with the pandemic on their own. As I got up from that dining room table, I realized that part of my job and part of being a good teacher is not necessarily that the kids know that I know so much. It's the fact the kids know that I care. And this is my 444 moment.
Gianni, thank you, sir. What an incredible story. The reflective, the pensive approach, going to your students, referencing my headset as referencing the great Janet Jackson. I did not think that would happen with this headset, but so it goes. I love it. It's a compliment. And I do have to say, Jay-Z, if you are out there, please, I can't make the graphic appear at the bottom to donate to our wonderful programs at Ford's Theater. But I know we've reached out. If you're able, this is an incredible program. And Mr. Clarkson is just a great example of the teachers and educators and artists and students that are involved in our amazing oratory program here. Our next teacher comes to us from the West Coast. I see the sun is setting out of my windows here in Hagerstown. But Callan Taylor, who's a middle school teacher and librarian with Visitación. Oh, I knew I was going to wreck that one. Visitación Valley Middle School. Nailed it. First try. First mistake I've made all year. In San Francisco, California. This is Callan's second year with the National Oratory Fellows Program. Callan, the floor is yours.
You had me at 2 poolside bars. That is what Michelle told me when I made reservations for our families at the Riviera in Palm Springs for spring break. Michelle is our school nurse, and she is a hard worker no matter the year, and especially this year. She has 2 kids on distance learning at home, working to vaccinate San Francisco on the weekends, and trying to help reopen our schools. I've been sitting for 15 months in the same chair every day in my small San Francisco apartment that turned school for 3 adults, my 3 boys, and 3 cats during the pandemic. The pandemic. We needed out. Now, San Francisco has been strict. Our mayor said if you're vaccinated, you can go outside maskless, and everyone is still wearing masks. When they said wear a mask, we did, and still no one has taken them off. Halfway through this pandemic experience were the fires. For weeks and weeks, we had fires. I don't know, remember the crazy orange skies? That was the lowest point, number 1. We cannot go out, we cannot stay in. When December rolled around, that was low point number 2. The surge. It shut us all down. I can remember March 13th, 2020, our last day of school, thinking, what am I going to do for 3 weeks? When a closed holiday was becoming our reality, I cried, how am I going to do this? So once that second dose of Moderna hit my arm, I was hitting the road with Michelle and our kids. We wanted heat, pools, drinks by the pools, no Zoom, no complaints of variants or what will happen to our dogs if we go back to school. It was about 2 poolside bars. We rolled into the hotel, yet it was no longer the Riviera with photos of Frank Sinatra and Elizabeth Taylor, but the Jimmy Buffett Margaritaville. Instead of 2 pools, it was 1. And that one pool was jam-packed. It was like one of those spring break pictures of Miami, but for the elementary school set. Our kids took off running and cannonballing, and it took a while to find a chair, and even longer to find a drink, but it was not Zoom. At this point, it was almost 15 months of limited exposure to groups of people. Now remember, San Francisco went full lockdown. I think we were the most serious country or city in the country. It was hard to focus with so much stimuli at this pool, Margaritaville. It was like being in an action movie where everything goes into slow motion. There was laughing, toasts, screams, skin, teeth. There were no rules in this post-COVID 5 o'clock somewhere pool. There were huge floaties, super soakers, and almost zero staff. Usually I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, reapplying sunscreen, yelling, no running. But I couldn't muster the strength to do it. And from the looks of the other parents, no one else could either. My boys commandeered a floaty and were playing a game of chicken with some other kids. There were these other kids doing backflips off the pool stair rails. We all needed this moment of abandon, with no risk, no rules, bright sun, and no cords or chargers. After sunset, I heard a woman complaining about kids in the hot tub to a frazzled, no older than 18-year-old security guard, and I knew my boys had to be a part of that. I ran, leaping over chaise lounges, sneaking between drunk dads, and whispered through the bushes, security. And they knew. My boys jumped out, along with a bunch of other kiddos. Yet the woman got me, and she let me have it. Calmly, I tried to reassure her. Yes, I know you're on vacation. Yeah, I'm sorry that they cannonballed in the hot tub and got hot tub water in your drink. I will talk to them right away. I really did feel bad for her, and that she was trying to enjoy a quiet hot tub experience on a 100-degree day with a million kids and their disengaged parents in an understaffed hotel called Margaritaville. I really did. Until, that is, she screamed and screamed. And once I worked at the YMCA and I've never seen a mom. My eyes shut and then I lost it. Just shut it. Shut it. You will not mom shame me. After this year, I do not doubt that every parent has struggled, cried, despaired, ate Twix bars late at night on their bathroom floor, feared for their children. Everyone has suffered. While I do realize that some have held a heavier burden than others, how can we quantify all the suffering? We have all watched our youth shut down day after day of Zoom, or heard parents cry, "What can I do to help?" I will not mom shame any parent. This is our reopening world. It's going to be loud and chaotic, too slow, too fast, awkward, and sad. We will hurt each other's feelings and sensibilities as we renegotiate our worlds. I think back to Cynthia, our Cynthia from Ford's, and she has a coworker that was studying cults. And she said there were many ways to join a cult, but not one way just to get out. With this pandemic, we joined the fight together, wearing masks and staying indoors in San Francisco. Yet there is no one exit plan. The bars are open, but not our schools. But like Cynthia's colleague said in helping those who exit a cult, we have to be open to welcoming everyone back from where they are at. We need to just be welcoming. So welcome back. Thank you.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Amazing.
Welcome back. But unfortunately, Jim, I think it's about that time for us to say goodbye. Am I correct?
I know. You know what you are. Callan's point about we're in this reopening world now. Kind of leads us in a direction where, I'm still here. This is so fitting because this wasn't rehearsed. I'm still here even though my camera dropped. What is the moment of hope that you have as we go into this reopening world?
Well, my moment of hope is that I believe that, you have places like Ford's Theater and educators throughout this country who still believe in what our forefathers initially believed would happen. They knew it wouldn't happen the following day. They knew it wouldn't happen maybe the next year or so, but they actually envisioned it that hundreds of years from now, maybe there would be moments in where places like Ford's Theater and schools like the schools that we work with throughout the country would have people who really understand that we're in this together, period. And so my hope is that, not only for the viewers that have listened to these stories, but just for us as a country, as a society, as citizens, as creatives, as educators, that we continue to think out the box and we evolve and really move towards what we think, or what I believe our forefathers really intended and envisioned for us to be in this country. And it sounds like our educators tonight, hey, they're right on track for it.
I'll tell you what, W.Ellington, I couldn't put it any better myself. I think you really captured, at least for me, and I think what our teachers talked about tonight, what we're hoping as we go into this reopening world, what we hope that will look like. Hey, we want to start by thanking everyone who tuned in to view these wonderful stories tonight. And we do want to take a moment to thank the sponsors of our education program. Their donations help make this work possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't have to be a big time donator like them, a sponsor, and you definitely don't have to be Jay-Z, like my brother Gianni mentioned. You can actually help and contribute if you would like. If you enjoy this type of programming and you want to consider, making a financial gift to Ford's Theater to support our mission and our work, what we do here, you can make that happen if you just go right to fords.org /donate. I think I got that right. So fords.org, fords.org /donate. And Jay-Z, if you are happen to be tuning in for some strange reason tonight, man, because I hear that Blue Ivy's a big Abraham Lincoln fan, So look, hey, I'm pretty sure Jim and I will gladly be roadies or something for you, man. We'd be, don't forget about us. Yeah, don't forget about us as well. And maybe we can get you to join us for the next storytelling.
That's right.
Edition here at Ford's Theater's programming here. Hey, it's been great, man. I think that's
wonderful
it. I think it's time to go, man. The sun does set in front of me.
Yes,
and,
sir.
It's time. All right.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you again for tuning in, and have a wonderful evening.
All right, y'all. Peace. Be safe. Okay. A country divided shall not stand.
That's
Abraham Lincoln. That's right, y'all. Peace.